Okay, so we'll continue from where we left off in Hilchos Taaruvot, Siman Kufyud. We're going over the Shach, the 36 categories, examples of Sfeka. What we may also do at the end is go through Sfekas in themselves. What constitutes a suffix, different kinds of Sfekas, Sfeka d'Oraisa versus Sfeka d'Rabbanan. What if it involves a Halacha l'Mon Sinai? There are various categories that are Asar, right? Different levels of Yisurim. Of course, it can make a difference if that's what we're dealing with. So we'll leave that for later. Not everyone goes through all the Sfekas of the Shach, because in reality you can really narrow it down. You can narrow it down to just the 8-10 types of Sfeka, which matter, or whether something is considered a Sfeka or not. The reason I chose to go through the Shach is because of the Hechetimzes, the various situations that can arise, which helps us understand how Sfeka works. But it's really not that critical that one memorize or know well all the 36. And as you will see today, sometimes it's a little bit hard to follow. There's quite a bit of machlokes. Not everybody agrees with the Shach, by the way, in every one of his examples, what says it's asur or it's mutter. As we spoke about last time, there are situations where we're dealing with two gufim, two entities. And whenever you're dealing with two completely separate entities, you cannot really apply the Sfeka. It has to really apply to the object that we're dealing with. And sometimes it makes a difference how you begin to analyze the situation. Because once you've determined that something is asur, you can't say, well, it still may be mutter. It could be a little tricky. Once you've determined that something is asur, if it's possible to determine, well, it's asur, then you can't go ahead and say, well, maybe we have a second chance at it, and now it can be mutter. It doesn't work like that. The way it always works well is when you are able to begin with a situation where it is mutter, possibly. Now, you want to say it's asur? I have another reason to say it's mutter. Okay? That way it works out a lot easier. So I figured I'd give you that additional detail because it will very much vary on the angle of attack here. In other words, what are we focusing on? Where do we start? Where do we begin here? What do we have here? Are the Sfekas also coming at the same time, or are they coming at different times? As we explained before, there may be a nafkamina of Niddah, of the Sfekas, if they're being Niddah, if they're known at the same time, or they're being known at separate time. All of these things can make a difference. But anyway, we're going to continue on in the Klalim, Halachas of the Shach. We've covered pretty much, I think, 3. We're holding by 4. And some of them are very similar, and he just modifies one detail, and that makes it a separate klal. So some Sforim who may review the halachas of the Shach may lump them into, numbers 4 to 6, number 6 to 8. Because they all concern a similar problem that arose, just modifying one little detail. So we left off with such an example, and we will continue to talk about some additional details in that example, which involves chickens and eggs. Yeah, various examples. Okay, and perhaps we'll review actually the last example. The last example was the simplest one, I think. It did involve two Sfekas. That's what a Sfeka is. One was concerning the hen, that a potential tarfus occurred, right? And we said it was a potential tarfus. It was a suffix treifa. The other detail that can possibly make a difference was that the egg that we have before us perhaps was already nigmara, was already a complete egg before we had any doubts, we had any question about the tarfus, the kashrus of the. And we said that makes a difference, because if it's an egg that's forming afterwards, being formed in a treifa or in a suffix treifa makes no difference. It's a suffix. You're not going to eat a suffix treifa, right? But if the egg was already completely formed, then perhaps, of course, it shouldn't be a problem.
Even if it was a vadai treifa.
What?
Even if it was a vadai treifa.
No, then you only have one suffix.
I'm just saying, if the egg was
you could still have the problem, right?
No, if the egg was vadai formed,
right,
and it was a vadai treifa chicken.
Yeah, if you knew for sure.
You could eat it.
When you know for sure. When you know for certain.
So
right.
since if you for sure in both cases that them were vadai,
Right.
you wouldn't have a problem eating. So if both of them are Sfekas,
Right.
the requires can
Right.
eat it.
Right. Now, but we said, nevertheless, that in the situation of a suffix treifa and a suffix on the egg of when it was formed, lo sharina midin sfeka, we're not going to allow it from mitam sfeka. Why not? What was the problem with that? Why didn't we allow for a situation where you have a hen that laid an egg, it's a suffix treifa, and there's another suffix if it was gemura bekliposo in its shell during the time that the suffix occurred or not. In other words, it was lo nigmero bekliposo.
Okay, then the problem was that with gufu,
Right.
condition for both of them.
This both sfekas have to apply to the exact same
issue.
goof, to the same issue. And here we don't really have that. So it appears, and that's very good. It's an excellent example, really, because you would know that. When we are comfortable with Sfeka, we can easily apply it to many situations, and the Shach is going to say, wait a minute, no, not everywhere. Here you have an example where you may say, well, great, I have a Sfeka. Who says that the hen is treif?
And if it is,
right.
Didn't look before.
Yeah, right. It's two separate things. You're not dealing with the exact same thing. You have a suffix gabi this, here you have something like this. So you really have one suffix, gabi a particular item, in this case the egg that we're concerned with. All right, so Klal Dalet. Klal Dalet, we have a courtyard. Well, not a courtyard. We have a, how do you call the place? A large yard where they
keep the chicken coop. Yeah.
well, the coop, yeah, I guess you can call it a coop, yeah. And in this coop, you have two tarnegolot. This is number 4. Okay, so two tarnegolot. One is a vadai shera, one is a vadai treifa. Okay, no more suffix negabe the hen. One is a vadai shera, one is a vadai treifa. And you find an egg. You go in. Good. Would you like it sunny side up, or would you scrambled?
Not so fast.
Yeah. But you have one egg and you have two chickens. One is a vadai shera, one is a vadai treifa. You found one egg. You don't know from where did this egg come from. Who laid the egg? Now, we also don't know, in this particular example, whether the egg was completely formed, not completely formed, right? We don't know that either, right? At the time that the treifa became known to us. But here in this example of Dalet, it's a vadai treifa. The hen. So you have a vadai treifa, you have a vadai shera, but you have two. Okay, that's what makes a difference here too. You have two chickens. One is a vadai treifa, one is a vadai shera. You have an egg that you found one morning. You don't know which hen laid it, and also you don't know if the egg happened to have been formed before or after you knew about the treifas. According to the Isa v'heter, even in this example, there's no heter because of Sfeka. He considers this also shnei gufim. According to the Isa v'heter, 2 gufim. Now, before we go on, this particular example of 2 hens, 1 egg, it can be in 2 ways. It could have happened in 2 ways, that the chickens themselves got mixed up later. Oh, which one was it?
We don't know which of the 2 hens is.
Right.
It
it can be. That scenario is possible. And you can have the same halacha in a scenario where the hens are not mixed.
Since we know exactly which hen is treif, we just don't know which way the egg.
Exactly. All right? In other words, you can subdivide this halacha into 2 scenarios. Will it make a difference or not? Well, it depends who you hold like. Right? But you can have 2 scenarios in the situation where you have the 2 hens.
So, but independent of the fact that the hens got mixed together, I don't know which is the treifa one.
Right.
In addition to that, I also have an egg which I don't know which of the 2 hens
That's
laid
correct.
it.
That's
Or
correct. Yeah.
is it the fact that I don't know whether it was the treifa hen that laid the egg is because I don't know which of the 2 hens is treif. I know which hen laid the egg. I don't know which 2 of the 2.
No, we don't. We're not dealing with that yet. We don't know which.
So we don't know which one laid the egg, and
Exactly.
the question is, maybe we don't even know which of the 2 hens is treif. Besides the fact that we don't know which
Exactly.
one laid the egg.
Yeah. So you have 2 possible scenarios. Now, the Shach, in explaining the Isser v'heter, it appears there's a machlokes on how the Shach learns in both scenarios. The Bithim Poiskin want to say that the Shach says 2 different halachas. depending on the scenario. But if you read, there's, by the way, if you have a Shulchan Aruch, you will see that the Shach has a long version of the halachas of Sfeka, and he has biktsara, a summary, or a short version of what he said in the long version.
No. A kitzur Shach.
A kitzur, yeah. So, there, in this particular example, there may be a difference of opinion as how he holds, because it appears in the long version that he says one thing, in the shorter version he says something else. All right, makes no difference. But what does he say? So in one version, it appears to be that he's saying that the Isra Veheter, where he takes this makor of halacha, would say that the halacha makes no difference whether the hands got mixed, whether the hands are not mixed. We have an egg, we don't know where it came from, we know one is a vadai treifa. You don't have a Sfeka. Why? Simply because this is an example of Shnei Gufim. Alright, that's the Isra Veheter. Prime God and Rabbi Akiva Eger, both have a very good kasha. It can only be, they say, that in a situation that if they were not mixed, if the hands were not mixed, it only makes sense that the two Sfekas concern the same thing. When the hands are not mixed, the two Sfekas are concerning the egg. Where did this egg come from? And even it came from the kosher. Even if you say it came from the Safek Treifa, maybe it was already complete.
From the vadai treifa.
From the vadai treifa, right? Thank you. From the vadai treifa, maybe the egg. We're talking about the egg right now. Maybe it was already formed. Because we have a suffix legabe
the egg.
The egg.
But they should have said it already before. They should have said it already when we said that we have suffix treifa and we have a suffix treifa. Then I'm looking at the egg. Is this egg treifa or not? Maybe it comes from a treifa hen, or maybe it comes from. Who cares if there are two hens or one where I have a suffix?
You're going to see soon.
Okay.
Yeah. In other words, they're trying to say it does make a difference in the scenario.
Whether I have two hens for one is bad.
No. At least in this case, whether the hens were mixed or not mixed. First, let's see.
But right now we have a case where they're not mixed.
Yeah. So what they're saying is when they're not mixed, you can allow a Sfeka because the suffix concerns only the egg. Right. Right. We don't know from which hen it was, but if the hens are mixed,
I see now.
Yeah. If the hens are mixed, which is interesting, by the way, we're going to see an opposite example of where it's the opposite in. When they're not mixed, it's no good. When they are mixed, it is good. But here, they want to say that if the hens got mixed, we would aser the taruvas.
Not the egg, that is. Are we cooking the two?
No. Step one. We would aser the taruvas. In other words, what we're saying is you have a taruvas here of chad bechad. Mm-hmm. So you already have gone through a step. Remember we spoke about this?
Right.
We're going through steps. If you've gone through a step, well, you've dealt with it. So here it happens automatically.
So you never converted it into a vadai.
You've made it into a vadai. The hens got mixed. Made it into a vadai. You've made the hens into a vadai. You've made the hens into a vadai. So we treat it, because we treat it as chad v'chad. Then each tarnegolet is a vadai iser. If that's the case, you don't really have a Sfeka anymore when they're mixed. You only have one suffix. I like this one. It's a very good analysis. I mean, it's interesting that the Prima Godin wants to say that the Shach too would agree. In other words, it's not so clear that the Shach says like the Isra Veheter, that in both scenarios it's all the same. Depending on the version you read, Prima Godin wants to basically convince us that even the Shach agrees with this. It just makes sense that way. You really don't have a suffix when it's nitarev. But when it's not nitarev, Sfeka is a very good Sfeka, like gabe the egg. If you look at the egg, you start off with the egg. That's the question, is the egg. You're starting off with a good, normal Sfeka. All right.
And that is unlike the first chicken, if the hen is, because there the uncertainty was the hen.
Yes, yeah, it's a completely different thing. So that's why
whereas here we don't
here
have
it's a bad eye. We don't have an uncertainty, right?
Because I'm uncertain in the egg. Which one did it come from? We don't have an uncertainty.
So it's interesting how sometimes an uncertainty makes a problem. Mm-hmm. Here you're seeing there the uncertainty causes a problem in the hen. Here the certainty.
there's a vadai.
It's a vadai that Yeah, so I can focus on the egg. Where did the egg come from? Which is very interesting. I thought that was a very. I pretty much thought about what you're thinking.
But it depends so much on how you form it.
Yes.
If you say I don't know which chicken laid the egg, then it sounds like the doubt the uncertainties with respect to the
Yeah, we will see in the following examples that sometimes that's the question, is how you formulate it. Yeah, what do you begin with? And that's why some of them would say this is asur versus mutter, depending how you formulate it. And sometimes there's a consensus, yeah. All right, next klal. You have 2 chickens, 2 hens in the chatzer. One of them is a suffix treifa. Okay, we're going back to suffix treifa. But this time, we know when the egg was formed. In other words, the egg was not formed yet. Okay, so here we have the
so here for sure the egg was formed
after it became a suffix treifa.
Oh, a suffix treifa.
A suffix treifa, right? So here the case is that one of the hens is a suffix treifa, but right, the egg was formed afterwards. In other words, the egg would be a problem if in fact it was a treifa.
And we don't have a question which of the hens laid the. So basically, we're just with one hen.
No, we don't know which one laid the hen.
So we don't know
egg.
which
we don't know
two
which.
hens laid
No,
the egg.
right. We don't know which hen laid the egg. But here, the only variation here is that it's a suffix treifa, and as far as the egg, we know when the egg was formed.
Okay.
The egg was formed for sure after it became known to us that there's a chashash, there's a suffix treifa in it.
So all the regarding the hens. There's no suffix regarding the egg. All the Sfekas are. Maybe this is
exactly.
the suffix.
Yeah,
Maybe it's not a treifa, and if it is, maybe it's the one that's
this.
not.
The Yisrael Hatter says it's a Sfeka.
It's because it's all regarding.
It's all regarding the hen.
Right.
Yeah. The suffix is from the kshera, and even if you want to say it came from the second one, maybe she's a kshera too.
But isn't this a case? We have something we're not sure whether it's an available. It falls into a pot with other food. Didn't we say that the fact that it's another food doesn't help us? Because it's a taaruvot. Because one is a question regarding the taaruvot. One is a question regarding
there's no question of taaruvot. Again, the question is, like you said before, it's more about the hen.
Right, I'm saying about the hen. But it's a mixture of 2 hens.
No.
One's a treifa hen, one not. So
No. Who says there's a mixture?
Well, you said that we don't know which one it is.
No. In this example, klal hey, we also once again have the possible 2 scenarios. Were the hens mixed, or do I know which hens they are?
I thought we were talking about the one where we don't know which one.
We're done with that, right? We're done with klal dalet, where we had 2 scenarios. Legabe vadai treifa, remember? That was klal dalet. Vadai treifa.
Well, we didn't know when the egg was formed.
Right.
Now we have a case where we do know where the egg was formed.
Yes.
And
it's a suffix treifa on the hen.
Right, but we.
And we also can introduce 2 possible scenarios in this halacha of have the hens been mixed up or are they identifiable? Which one is the suffix?
I thought we were talking about the ones with the case where they were mixed.
In other words, in the same way in klal dalet we said we have 2 possible scenarios. The hens had been mixed or not. Here we also have that possibility of having 2 scenarios, when it's a suffix treifa legabe the hen, and the egg we have no question.
The egg was for sure formed at the time that it was that was already a treifa.
It was already a suffix treifa.
So, with respect to the chicken that is a suffix treifa, we know the first scenario. The first that has a suffix treifa.
Right.
So we know which hen it came from.
No, we don't necessarily know.
Then the 2 hens. We don't necessarily case with.
No. The hens are identifiable.
I know which hen is a treifa. I just don't know which one laid the egg.
Right. That's still the suffix. That's still the suffix. Who laid the egg? There's another suffix. Was what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
Anyway, so here we still have the same question. The question is legabe, which hen laid the egg? Now, but in this scenario, we have. The egg is known to us, having been formed after the suffix treifa became known, but we don't have a vadai treifa. One hen is a suffix. But in this halacha of klal hey, we can also introduce 2 scenarios like we did before. Did the hens get mixed up, or did they not? And would it make a difference if they did or did not? So we have the same. So here the Yisrael Hatter says that yes, the egg is mutter, like you said. The Sfeka is a good Sfeka. It concerns one thing, concerns the hen. But there's a machloikis apoiskim legabe, will it make a difference whether they got mixed in or not? Here, this is what's interesting. Here, that if they were not mixed, okay, what you have here is 2 hens, they're not mixed, one of them is a suffix.
Right.
One of them is a suffix, so the suffix is standing by itself.
It's a suffix.
And we say it's doraisa.
its contribution to the question of the egg, it is a suffix.
It's a suffix. It's also. So we were able to identify, right? But it's standing by itself. Huchra kvar dina, in other words, or kam dina, however you want to know, a din has been already applied to it. It's a suffix. So you can't say, all right, kosher or treif. And even if it's kosher, right?
On the contrary, you can say, is it treif or kosher? Even if you don't tell me that this hen is indeed treif,
it's indeed treif.
Maybe the other one laid the egg.
Exactly, but you've already said it's treif.
This
in other words,
treif,
yeah,
but
exactly.
Maybe the other one laid the egg.
Right.
So I would have a Sfeka. Number one, I don't know if the hen is really treif or not. And even if you're going to tell me it was treif, maybe it's not the one that laid the egg. Maybe it's the kosher hen that laid the egg.
In other words, you don't know which one laid the egg.
Correct.
Even if you want to say this one did, maybe she's kosher because it's a
Maybe
suffix.
it's a kosher one.
No, maybe the suffix is a kosher.
The one that I have a Sfeka about,
Yeah.
maybe that one isn't a treif, maybe it's a kosher one.
Right. So it would appear that you would be able to say it.
It's a Sfeka, no?
Right, but it's not.
Anyway.
Why? Because according to some poskim, if you're able to identify the suffix treifa, remember in this case where the scenario is one scenario is you're able to, this one isn't, one is not,
Right.
then her din has been already settled.
As a Sfeka.
No,
Not as an Isser.
as an Isser. It's
Why
a
is it
suffix,
Isser?
because she's a suffix. If she's a suffix and I identify her, right, I want to know where the egg came from. Okay. This she's just as an Isser like anything else because she's a suffix. Okay? It's not like happening necessarily at the same time, where you have the two Sfekas occurring at the same time. According to some poskim, if they're not mixed and I can identify them, right, her din has already been settled. That step, that stage, number one of determining whether she's usher or mutter, has already been settled. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Masha'inkin, if they're mixed,
It's settled as Asr.
as usher. Masha'inkin, if they're mixed, then you can't say that she has already become usher. Why? Because even though they're mixed, they're not necessarily usher min Torah. Right? It's a suffix iser. Remember what we said about suffix Sfeka? One is a derban, one is the whole thing is a derban. In other words, if the two hens have been mixed, you don't really have here a suffix iser min Torah anymore. When you have her by herself, according to this way that some of the points can learn, when you have her by herself, it's a suffix iser, suffix. Okay? Suffix. I can't touch it. But if the hens have been mixed, I don't really have a suffix deraisa here.
Because the fact that we assume that the suffix is an Isser, this is a Rabbinical din on the suffix.
On every chicken that is mixed, we have a Sfeka. When the two of them are mixed, on every hen I have a Sfeka. Is this the one? And even if you say it is the one, maybe she's really kosher.
I thought that's what we said. That
On the hens
on
alone.
the hens,
when they're mixed.
But I thought that's what we said before, that when you have a suffix and you have a suffix arising from a taruvas, where that goof is part of the taruvas, that on such a case you say it's not a Sfeka because the suffix for taruvas is not the suffix on the gufo. Didn't we say that last week?
Yeah, but that's not this case. Here this case is the taruvos is the gufa isser problem. It's not a separate. When we spoke about gufa and taruvos, we spoke about a problem arising in one place, about a chaticho, and then that chaticho becoming mixed on.
So
there are two separate things.
So I'm not sure whether this chaticha is kosher or not,
Right.
and now this chaticha became mixed with other chaticha. So
Right.
the fact that they're mixed does not establish a second suffix.
Right.
Right. Now here, by the chicken, by the hen, I know that the hen is
a suffix trait.
is a suffix treifa.
Right.
So now, how is that different? I have
Yeah.
a piece of meat that is a suffix treifa. I have a hen that is a suffix. I mean, if the hen was a
Yeah.
piece of meat, it would not be a Sfeka,
Yeah.
right?
I cannot have it. I mean, it's not a Sfeka, it's also min rabbanan. But it's not. What I'm saying, it's not also min Torah. That's all I'm saying.
So before, when we said by the treifa being mixed with the taruvos, that we don't have a Sfeka there.
Right.
We were saying that that the rice it is a Sfeka to Rabbanan, it's not a Sfeka. We said we had a piece of meat
the
that
whole
was maybe
the whole thing does not constitute even a Sfeka altogether for a different reason because we're talking about a suffix in the goof and a suffix in the taruvos.
So
Right.
now here, the chicken, if it was a dead piece of chicken,
Yeah.
for which I have a suffix taruvos, I would have the exact identical case that we had in the case before.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say a treifa piece of meat that becomes mixed into a pot with meat.
Right.
Maybe that meat was a dead piece of chicken mixed into a pot with kosher.
Right.
I would still say the same thing, that the Taaruvot does not add up with the Sfeka with respect to the non-kosher piece of meat. So that's my problem. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. Let me see if I'm misunderstanding it.
No, you see you're missing one little thing here.
Yeah.
The difference here with the chicken is, in the case of where they're not mixed, here in this example, they're not mixed, then you've already determined the halacha of this Safek Isser as being a Safek Isser. You have not determined that halacha of a Isser when you're dealing with a Taaruvot. You're not saying for sure this is Asr. It's mixed.
Oh, that's a different argument.
You see what I mean?
That's
you have not made it Asr, and therefore it prevents you from continuing on now.
That's a different argument.
Yes.
That was not the argument we used before.
Not before. Before we didn't use that argument.
Before we used the argument, this is a Safek Treifa piece.
Right.
And it fell into a pot with meat.
Right.
And now I don't know which of the pieces in the pot was a Safek Treifa
Right.
piece of meat.
So,
I could think it's a Sfeka.
Right.
Because I have a Safek, is this meat really the one that was a Safek Treifa?
Yeah.
And then if it is, maybe it's not a Treifa at all. I don't have a Sfeka because the Safek of Taaruvos doesn't add up with the Safek Beguf.
Yeah, you can't add it up. Yeah,
right. Now here, the meat could be a chicken, a dead piece of, right? So
Oh,
maybe
right.
this chicken is a treifa, maybe not.
Yeah.
It got mixed in a pot with other chicken. So the fact that it's a Taaruvos of chicken does not add a suffix to the fact that maybe it was a treifa.
Yeah, but we're not
chicken or
dealing. Yeah, but we're not dealing with the chicken now. We're ultimately to determine the status of the egg.
But we were dealing with the chicken now. We said
Temporarily,
because
right.
the first step was to say
Right.
when this chicken that is suffix treifa
Right.
was mixed with another chicken that is a kosher chicken. So now
It's not also in the Torah.
Uh-huh.
There's no Isser.
And when we said the meat that fell, that was an Isser Rabbanan, it wasn't Isser D'Oraisa. When we said I don't have a Sfeka over there.
Over there, you haven't really. Over there, we're not saying it already has become Asr either. Over there, we just disallow the Sfeka because it doesn't apply to the same thing.
Why don't we allow the Sfeka over here?
We do allow it.
Why don't we disallow it like we disallowed it over there?
No. Over here, it's a question of whether it's on the same thing or not.
So
right?
basically, I don't have a Sfeka here regarding the chicken either.
So here, we don't have a problem with the chicken determining that this is, was
That will be the
becoming
next
Asr.
step. But regarding Sfeka,
right.
the chicken case would be the exact identical case. Like the
It will be
case.
similar. No, it will be similar to the other chicken case where the question is on the egg.
What difference does it make whether the meat that fell in was a Sfeka meat became mixed in a pot, or a Sfeka chicken became mixed with a kosher chicken?
Because you're dealing always with the meat.
Exactly, that's my
Right.
point. We're dealing always with the meat.
And still we disallowed it.
I'm saying, but it's fake.
Right.
But over there, we said there is no Sfeka because of Taaruvot. With Lahoyra, here also don't have a Sfeka.
Not because of the Taaruvot. I don't think it's because of the Taaruvot that's messing it up in this case. It's because we're saying...
Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not.
Right.
I'm just asking a different question.
Right. It
Regardless
does in
of
another
Sfeka,
place. Yeah.
This would be the identical case, I'm asking.
Very similar. It will be very similar. Except
Well,
that
I
here...
couldn't say it's Sfeka here because one suffix is a Taaruvot, the other suffix is Bekul. That was an argument over there. One suffix was Bekul, one suffix was
Yeah, but what are we
Maybe
saying?
this doesn't play a role in the argument here.
Yeah. The Shach says over here, it depends. Maybe I think. By the way, what you're saying is what some of the poskim say. I mean, I have to look it up again. There's a lot of opinions regarding some of these details because of what you said. It resembles some other dinim that we learned. That's part of the problem over here. Why they do or they did not agree always with the Shach, as we're going to see in the next few klalim. There's some very, very tough questions on the Shach. There's even a Chavas Das says that in this case, I don't let you be mater what the Shach says, unless you can answer my questions on the Shach. If you're smart enough to answer my questions, then you can eat it. He says that language. I thought it was an incredible language. Chavas Das says that in one of the klalim. And he happens to have a very good point. I mean, he obviously, so that's the lashon he uses. And I won't. You can only those who are able to answer my questions on the shach can eat this this egg. Yeah. Anyway, so in this scenario, what I thought was interesting was that in this scenario we have a suffix treifa. Okay, remember what did we say about a vadai treifa? The vadai treifa, we weren't sure about the egg, but we were sure about the vadai treifa. Just we don't know who laid the egg. So we wanted to make a chiluk over there, legabe, if the hens got mixed up or not mixed up. If they're not mixed up, right?
And we had a suffix by the egg.
Right. So it's permitted when they did not get mixed up.
Right.
Why is it permitted when they not mixed up? Because the suffix is the gabat the egg. We know we are able to identify the hens. That we don't have a question about that. We have a question about the egg and only the egg, and it's perfectly fine, right? And we don't know then when the egg was formed, of course. So we have two sfekas. Right. Here we have an interesting situation. We have a suffix treifa, not a vadai treifa. It's a suffix treifa. We know when the egg was formed. So what are the sfekas? The other suffix is just who laid the egg. Okay? We will still have, right? So we have, but what's interesting is that when we have a suffix treifa, not a vadai treifa, and you have the same scenarios again, were the hens mixed or not mixed? In this case, if the hens are not mixed, it's a problem. As opposed to the first case, it was good that they're not mixed. Here, if the hens are not mixed, it's a problem. We don't have a sfeka because we're saying the isser, we've already determined.
Because it was vadai.
Because even though it's a suffix,
I thought the egg was a vadai.
Yeah, but here the hen is a suffix. But we're saying
one suffix.
Exactly, but you only have one suffix.
I can't eat the hen if it's a suffix. I can't eat the
exactly. So once you can't eat the hen because you've said it's a suffix hen, suffix treif, then you're only left with one suffix, and that's no good. You've determined the outcome of the hen, so you're only left with one suffix.
Wait a second. So you're saying that by the egg again? I don't know. I thought we said.
No, I do know. I do know.
So I only have one suffix.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, why can't you treat this as a sfeka?
Why could you? What would be the second?
We don't know about the hen. If the hen is a vadai treifa or not, it's a suffix treifa.
So what is the other? Oh, I don't know which hen laid it.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
You still have two. Can you combine them? That's the whole question. Can you combine them? So we say here no. Because once you've determined it's a suffix, you're saying, okay, it's a suffix, but your suffix is usher. Then you're still left with one suffix, which is interesting, as opposed to if you have the other scenario where the hens are mixed, then you do have, according to some, you do have a sfeka.
So with respect to the egg that was vadai formed the time the treifa already took a...
Right.
So then my two sfekas would be, which chicken laid? And is one of the two chickens really a treifa? And since the question on the chicken, is it really a treifa, already answers it.
Right.
So there is an isser not because it's a treifa. There's an isser because of a suspicion of it being
a suspicion of being right.
But that is also a vadai isser. It's a maybe treifa, but it's a vadai isser.
Yes.
So I have a vadai isser mixed with a vadai mutter.
Right.
So the combination of the two is a vadai isser again.
Yes. But the Shach adds something very interesting. He says you may be tempted to say that nevertheless you have here a chisoron, a disadvantage of two gufim. Okay, because he's allowing it. Remember, if it's mixed, and you're saying that maybe it is treif, maybe it's not treif, and even if it is coming from this hen that has a suffix, maybe it's bichlal, it's mutter, right? Mm-hmm. But in the end, it may appear that it's two guf, it's still two gufim. So he says a big chiddush that here the additional suffix is not lekula, it's lechumra. What we're saying is we're looking at the egg, right? The egg, we're saying, where did it come from? It came from the...
Either one or the other.
Kosher. And even if you say it came from the suffix, maybe it's not. It's completely kosher too. So he says the second suffix that you're introducing in this case is a chumrah suffix. It's not a kula suffix. Whenever the second suffix is a chumrah suffix, you don't say in this case that it's a chisoron because of two gufim. The only time you say it's a chisoron of two gufim, two separate gufim, not gufim taaruvot, all right? Two gufim is when the second suffix is a lenient suffix. Even if you say this is a problem, perhaps it's not a problem, right? But when the second suffix is, you're being machmer, if anything, over here, it's not a question. It will not disturb the fact that there may be two here.
But why does he resolve a suffix in a chumrah suffix? I can say it's a chumrah, I can say it's a 50-50.
Yeah, but that's why it depends how you formulate it, like you said. Depends how you start. Even if you may want to say that it appears as two gufim, I can show you why in this case it would not be two gufim.
I can't believe the Shach rely just on formulation.
Yeah, no, but because it all depends how you formulate it. It does make a difference. And here we need to formulate where the egg is coming from, right? So we have a doubt. We were saying maybe it came from the kosher one, and even if you say it came from the one that has a suffix, maybe it's kosher. So the second suffix is a chumrah. It's not a kula.
Why would we?
The second suffix, you're saying but what if it's from this? Well, even if it's from that, but maybe it's kosher. So you say, what if it's from the chumrah? No, it's from the suffix.
Then why don't we ask the when is it for each hen?
The what?
Each hen.
Right.
And that makes it automatically a suffix. And it's a suffix question. Second, not first.
No, once, because if you start with the chumrah first.
No, if we ask when was it for?
In this particular, it all depends on the example. Right? It all depends on the example. You're dealing with an egg here. You're not dealing with a chaticha, which is a suffix. You started off with a chaticha. It could have been treif. Well, but it got mixed in into taruvos. See what I mean? So you started off with a different scenario. You started off with a suffix isser. Here you're starting off with the egg, possibly being from a kosher hen. Well, but it could be also from the other one that's not kosher. Well,
maybe the other one is kosher.
Maybe the other one is also kosher. This would be okay. Why would it be okay? Even if you say even if you want to say that it's too gufim here, it's not a problem because he says a chiddush. I mean, it's a chiddush. The second suffix is a chumrah suffix. I'm not trying to be more lenient. I'm trying to be stricter with my second suffix. Being stricter with the second suffix is not a problem. That's what he said. That's very interesting. I didn't really see anybody talk about it more.
When he's such, be careful about where you choose the beginning of your argument. And you'll always come up with a
not necessarily. Sometimes you have no choice.
You can say two gufim is okay.
Sometimes you have no choice. How do you begin? Like I said, with the taaruvos. I mean, you're starting off with the chaticha, which is suffix, that's falling in the taaruvos. You can't start always from the taaruvos. Sometimes you just can't, and sometimes you can. It all depends really on what are you looking at. What are you trying to determine?
Very helpful. That was going to be good.
Right.
And for a projector.
With charts and everything.
With the charts and map out with each argument.
Right,
and
sure.
put them next to each other, and you can.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right. The Pri Chodosh on this last klal says the exact opposite from the shach. He says if they're mixed, you should not allow the egg because you have a taruvos of chad bechad, and each one is kegufa shel iser. And the reason why the shach would not agree, even though this is all taken from the Rashba, that when you have a mixture, each one is kegufa shel isar. You don't really have roiv here, right? The shach probably would say that this chiddush of the Rashba, that each one is kegufa shel isar, when you have a taruvos of chad bechad, is only said when you have a vada isar. Here we're beginning with the suffix isar. So who's the shach? The shach would not necessarily say that this is chad bechad.
But then again, now he's beginning with it, so then he wouldn't be able to say it's l'chumra.
No, but this is the Gabi the
I know, to defend himself with respect to the Pri Chodosh one would say
the Pri Chodosh, yeah. So the Pri Chodosh would say that since you have a taruvos of chad bechad, each one's kegufa shel iser. Masha'enkin, when they're not mixed, he holds like the halacha before. They're not mixed. You don't have a taruvos chad bechad, and you could be matter the egg because the gabi the egg, you have two sfekas coming up at the same time. You don't say according to the Pri Chodosh, the chicken is already also, it's a suffix isser. No, according to the Pri Chodosh, the sfekas are happening at the same time. You're analyzing the situation, you're looking at the egg, that's what we want to determine, and it's happening. According to him, it's a very interesting point. Why separate them? Who says you can separate them? They don't really happen in stages. So anyway, that's what he holds. He holds that if you look at the egg, you can't say that it's happening, the two sfekas at the same time. So by him, the maila is when they're not mixed. Even in this case. Alright, klal vav, number 6. You have two hens. One of them is a suffix treifa, okay? And now you found two eggs. It's interesting, huh? You see why not everybody goes through all of this?
I know why. I find it perfectly logical.
Yeah.
It takes
a lot of logic here, yeah. It takes every example.
What was the last scenario?
So here we have klal vav. You have two hens. One of them is a suffix treifa, and you have two eggs in front of you. You found two eggs, not one.
And do you know certain that each by a different
yes.
hen could both?
Thank you very much. And you know that each egg was laid by a different hen.
Okay.
Somehow.
Are the hens mixed?
Okay, that we don't know yet. Right? Okay, this is the way he lays it out. You have two hens. One of them is a suffix treifa. You found two eggs, and you know that each hen laid one egg. So what do we have? We have a taruvos of chad bechad on the eggs. Here. And one of them came from a suffix treifa.
So you don't know which egg came from.
Right.
You laid one egg,
Right.
but you know which.
So this taruvos is also according to everybody. Because you here is a real example of a suffix echad beguf and suffix echad betaruvos, saying before of chad bechad. Right? Because you have the two eggs, You have the suffix gabe there, the hen. So here there's no machlokes pretty much. Everybody says that there's a typical suffix in Taaruvos, suffix in the guf. You don't have Sfeka.
So the suffix in Taaruvos are the two eggs.
Yeah.
And the suffix in the guf is guf of one of the two eggs.
Right. One of the hens.
Oh, the suffix in the guf is the suffix in the hens.
Sure. Two separate things.
So the hens are not even part of the mixture.
Real. Yeah.
But you'd end up with a different answer.
Well, obviously, whenever you have roiv, then you're introducing another concept of roiv. But here we're not dealing with roiv. We want that. What's interesting about this halacha is we've covered it in the mechaber before, that we want to allow an iser, we want through the koach not of bitul beroiv, through the koach something called sfek. We're trying to We're trying to matter it from something completely different. We may be able to, we may not be able to. So roiv, of course, is a completely different situation. So here everybody would agree it's different kinds of sfekas. Okay, number 7. The following I'm warning you, we'll just take a few minutes real quickly. They're a little complicated. This is the one I told you that not everybody is very much in agreement with. It involves stores. 2 stores, not 2 chickens anymore, not 2 eggs anymore, 2 stores. One was selling Basar kosher, the other one was selling Suffolk treifa. There was a Suffolk treifa in that store. And somehow the stores got mixed up. And it was the merchandise, right? And we found one chaticha laying somewhere. And the shach says that this chaticha is mutter because you have a Sfeka, right? Suffolk, it came from the kosher store. And even if you want to say it came from the other store, maybe it's a kosher piece of meat.
The store.
Right? Yeah. And he compares it very much, this example of stores, he compares it to the 2 Tanegolot that we saw in Klal Hey. Even though the suffix was already known in the store, he says it's okay. The guy by the story may have been already known, but the Basar, the Sfekas are happening at one time. That's the way he explained. And therefore, since they're happening at one time, you really have a Sfeka beguf echad, not in 2 separate things. Rabbi Kiva, this is the one. Rabbi Kiva Eger and the Chavas Das ask many questions on this. Now, instead of going through all their questions, let me tell you what their questions have to do, because otherwise we'll spend here a lot of time. We learned the famous halachas that have to do with kavua, with porish, called the porish meruba porish, pieces of meat that got mixed in, or animals that are mixed and one of them came out. You have what's called kavua. Because of all of those halachas that are very similar to the example that he's presenting, where he himself, the shach, has said it different, they very much therefore have difficulty understanding why he would allow it over here. I'm trying to simplify it without getting into too much detail. Why should chanuyos, in your example of chanuyos, where you have, you don't know where the meat came from, and you appear to have a sfeka, fine, but you disallowed it over there. Because of all kinds of issues. We have gzera, shemarikach min kavua. Remember that gzera we have? That they take from the kavua if you're allowed to take here. So you have situations where if kavua is a component, we're machmir for a variety of reasons.
Did you say was it a raisa? Was it a raisa?
Yeah, a real kavua, but sometimes it's a kavua d'Rabbanan. So therefore, why is this example, which is very similar to those examples, any different? So obviously we don't have the chance to ask the shach. Can you please respond to that? Well, he has to agree to come. Yeah. So, anyway, so therefore they ask that's the one that I told you. The Chavas Das says that if you can answer my questions that I have on the shach, you can eat the bean. That's the one. According to the Pri Chodosh, where he says, but when the chickens are mixed, that you cannot, if they're mixed, you cannot be mater. Here he also would not allow it too. According to the Pri Chodosh that we saw before, that when the hens got mixed, he says it's asur. Only when they're not mixed. Here he would also not allow it. So it's a question of the shach. All right, but this example involves stores.
Just to clarify the not good piece, the questionable piece.
Right.
There's a suffix on that piece and piece out of it. Does that make a difference?
No, in the example that the shach brings, that store sells suffix treifa. It's not just one piece of meat. In general, that store is questionable.
Oh, okay.
Some of the meat, a lot of the meat, is questionable. There's suffix treifa all over that store. They've been questionable meat. And what's interesting is that this can happen. You could think about it. Caterer got meat. I don't know. Somehow it got mixed up. The shipments, one was glatt kosher, one was not, and some people are machmir to have only glatt kosher meat, We're not saying that the kosher is not kosher. Remember, but there's a big difference. And when you're dealing with glat, or even glat and bet Yosef, that is hard, you wonder, well, what now? What should I do? It's kosher. Yes, it's kosher, but it's not glat kosher. It's not bet Yosef. And if things get mixed up and you have one, where did it come from? Which one is it? It has no stamp. It could present a problem. These questions arise also in other situations. You come to a restaurant and you're makbid. Which meat did they get? You don't know. Could you rely? There's a whole halacha. Rabbi Yosef speaks about for those who are eating in restaurants. Ashkenazim, bishul akum versus depending on if you're a Sephardi or Ashkenazi. There's a difference. The halachas of bishul akum. So there's Sfekas. There's all kinds of Sfekas.
So the meat is not a meat, it's not a bishul.
Yeah. And some people say don't eat in restaurants, right? Yeah, because of the various problems that can arise. But anyway, this is one of those examples where the Sephardim are stricter than Ashkenazim in treifas. The other areas, Ashkenazim are more machmir than the Sephardim. So anyway, sometimes, what if you're invited to his house? You're a Sephardi, you're allowed to eat in an Ashkenazi home. The Ashkenaz cannot have rice on Pesach, he goes to Sephardi home.
But it doesn't make the...
And he has to tell him, by the way, as he pointed out, and not be machshel him. For him, it's usher.
It doesn't make the plates usher, though.
Sephardi on Pesach, so long as he doesn't eat the kidneys?
Right. Now, would every Ashkenazi do that? No. I think but there's no problem. Even though you should use separate kelim, if you have a baby feeding formula that has kishut, it says in halacha you should give them separate kelim. But as much as people are very, very makar on Pesach, they have to know the halacha. The halacha says that certain things, you can't, overdo. There's no reason to overdo it. Even though Pesach people were always makar, they would not eat anywhere. Because of that, they would not trust. But what if he's completely trustable, but he just eats kidneys? Kidneys is only kidneys. It's not chometz. There is, of course, certain leniencies. So here, the pre-chodesh, as we said, would also be machmir and not allow the situation. Klal ches, you have two stores. One is kosher, one has a suffix treifa, and you found two chatichas. Okay, so it's similar to klal zayin, but this time you found two chatichas, and you know that every one of those chatichas came from another store. The halacha is exactly like the one before, by two tarnegolim and two eggs. Same thing, because you have two. Remember, two. So you have a taaruvos of chad vechad, a real taaruvos of chad vechad, and therefore it's klal tes.
So now, if we had the Sfeka alone, by the Sfeka alone, we didn't know which store it did come from.
Exactly.
Store. So there's a vada.
So which one did we know came from a vada? We didn't know.
The one right now.
No, we don't. We still don't know.
Come from mutters?
No, we just know one came from one separate. Yes, we do know that they came from separate. So, like we know with the eggs of the chickens, 2 eggs, 2 chickens, and we know that each one laid an egg.
So we know that for sure we have a store
from the Safek Yisrael. So, Klal Tes goes on with this and says that even if one of the pieces was lost, okay, you have 2 chatichas, 1 chaticha got lost. Okay, and it's not in front of us. All you have is 1 chaticha. Nevertheless, we say the chatichas are asuras because there was already taaruvos of 2 chatichas, and
we don't say nafalayam.
What? Oh, I'm going to get to that. I thought about that too, and the shach beat me too. We're going to talk about that soon. So. Okay, so the way he explains is like this. So you have 2 chatichas, 1 got lost, and then what are we going to ask? Maybe this is not the chaticha that had the suffix, right? And the suffix is the one that was nevad. And im titzeloima that this is the suffix, maybe it's not also.
So he's allowing it.
No. So he says if you're going to say that, what it's going to come out to be is going to be sfekas and shnei gufik, because you're dealing with one that is here and one that is not here. Torah Shloimim says in this case he wants to be Mekel. Torah Shloimim, I saw, wants to be Mekel when one is Nevda. Because it's like you're dealing with 1 chaticha. But according to the other opinions, the way the Shach explains that it turns out that you're dealing with 2 gufim if one is Nevad and one is not, one is present, one is not, in saying, well, is it this or is it that? But what about the fact that we've learned in the past an interesting halacha of falling into ocean? So the Shach says very simple. Don't get confused, he says. That famous heter of falling into the ocean, remember that, Taaruvos, one fell in. When was that said?
When there was a majority. So that's something that doesn't allow even in a Madria.
Right.
Area.
Remember, that was a special case only where the Chachamim did not allow something to become batul because of its chashivas in Roiv. In other words,
You
there was
had a roy, but you
right.
Shivas.
But they said, so came along this leniency that, however, if one fell into the yam, we let go of its chashivas. You know, we let go of our chumrah. You still need roiv. Exactly. You're always going to need roiv. But we said roiv would not be enough. Oh, the chachamim who said that roiv would not be enough are also saying, however, in the event that it falls into the ocean, we can assume that was the piece. It's only the Gabe that in, because over there the Chachamim allowed that leniency because they were the ones that were that would not apply over here, obviously, because here's the typical regular case of Issa Derai. So yeah, so you don't say, oh, Nevda. Klal Yud, and with this we'll finish for today. Just one more. Klal Yud has two halachas, two examples. B'shema Isu v'heter. You have a suffix Isser shenis'ar beroiv. Okay, you have not a real Isser, but a suffix Isser that came mixed in roiv. And apparently it's talking about a dover choshev here. Otherwise roiv is roiv. So I think I understood that it's talking about a dover choshev. So suffix Isser shenis'ar beroiv, and you have one of the taruvos being mixed up later on in a chad bechad situation, not in a real other big taruvos. Okay, so you have a suffix Isser. It's only a suffix Isser. It was mixed in a roiv. Then some of it came out. One of it came out. It was this arf chad bechad. Okay, they're both aser. The Shach explained. Okay, that since that in the taruvos arishoina, each one of them was aser. Right. In the first taruvos, each one is aser. So very simply, right? They continue to be aser in the second situation.
The Aser one would be Aser because, and the other one would be Aser because it's an Taaruvot.
Exactly. So here, this would be more of an example of a suffix echad beguf, a suffix echad betaruvos. Yes, like you've mentioned, right? We said that that's not a good Sfeka. Suffix echad beguf is an Aser or treif, and now we have a suffix in the taruvos. Which one is it? And those two are really happening at separate times. They always happen at separate, two completely different situations. So the Shach continues on to say, I think it's the Shach, that huadin, if you had one that was pirish, came out from the bunch and it's standing by itself. It's like it's part of the taruvos.
Well, you see, it's two
different stages. Yeah, two different.
So is the illustration for that, or is because one suffix is while the meat was still born, because that's what you call it, and the other one is after the animal was already shevet. Now it's in the pot. So distinct times for the two suffixes, or why
No. Two different times. All we meant was that it was a suffix trefa when it was first mixed, right? And now there's a second taruvos over here. It's a separate event.
Oh, you mean with respect to the two taruvos?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought you meant taruvos.
Yeah. Well, in the first taruvos itself, it's a goof. The Isser is the question. The suffix, there's a suffix in the goof itself.
Right.
Is this treif for kosher? Now we have a separate question, and that is the gabe the taruvos. So that is a typical example of if you have one suffix beguf and one taruvos, we disallow it. And then he also adds, even if one is pirish, like we've seen before, it would not make any difference, even though pirish is okay, but it's pirish from every one of those pieces is a suffix Isser. So pirish does not help me over here. You can't, you wouldn't allow Sfeka. Okay, so on this one too, on this last Klal, we have a kasha of the Primegodim, we have the kasha of the Binasadam and the Shach from Halacha, Hay, and Zayin by 2 chickens and 2 stores. Over there he wasn't machsh, he didn't consider them as Gufa Isser, and here he does. It's a question, why is the Shach saying that here it's no good and over there it is, where if here the problem is that this is the Gufa Isser, because it's the same thing, it's coming from the same pot, that each one was rendered also, then how come he doesn't say that also by the chickens and by the 2 stores? 2 chickens and 2 stores, that each one is a Gufa Isser. So it's a good question, that's another good question on the Shach. What makes this case any different? This case, I just think that it's more obvious that one is Guf and one is Taruvos. The Guf and Taruvos are very different. But over there you do have somewhat of a Taruvos too. So it's a good question. That's the question on the Shach, on why he distinguishes. You follow me? The idea of Guf, each one being the Gufa Isser, when you have Chad Bechad, can also apply to the chickens. Especially in the case where he was materit, when you were able to identify, this is the, right? I have a suffix legabe the egg. Legabe the egg, I didn't give it too much, I didn't try to figure out the Shach here. I'm just presenting the shach and the kasha. But if you think about it, maybe by the egg, it's a little bit more lenient because I guess it's in the case where, let me see, in the case of, obviously we're talking about the case of one egg, not two, but it was two hens. We're always focusing on the egg. We're starting off on where does the egg come from, right? And even if it came from the non-kosher one, it's already formed. Yeah, I think there must be some difference. I didn't take the time to really why the shach would differentiate, but that's the question that they have on the shach on this particular example of him saying that you have a real suffix in the guf and a suffix in Taaruvot, which is, in other words, not a perfect Sfeka. The second halacha in this klal yud was a suffix iser, shenisar beroiv chatichas heter, and in this second example, one chaticha fell into a kdeira. What's the problem in the kdeira? Tam. So the Sifsei Das explains that in this case we must be talking about you took out the chaticha that was a suffix or problem, and all you're left with tam. What's interesting about this particular scenario is that the kdeira, the tafshul kdeira, would be muter misfek sfeka. Concerning the tam, you would allow it. In other words, because here he says you're looking at the kdeira, you're looking at the tafshul, you're no longer looking at the piece. There's no piece. Interesting chiluk, a very small chiluk, but a very, very strong chiluk. You're dealing with the tafshul. The tafshul has a very good sfeka. Very interesting. Legabe the plita. In other words, we don't have enough to be mevatel the plita. Obviously, we're talking about there's not enough in the tafshul to be mevatel the plita.
Right. If you had
obviously, yeah. So legabe the tafshul, you have a sfeka. Suffix, you didn't have the problem piece fall in. It was a chiticha shel het, and even if you say it was a suffix iser, maybe it's kosher. Maybe it's not also at all. And here there's no chisorn of two gufim either, because we're starting here with the tafshil. We're focusing here on the tafshil. Maybe there's no iser klal over here.
So there's only one guf with the tafshil?
Exactly. That's what's interesting. That by the tam, there's no iser. You don't have that anymore.
So we're not like trying to permit the aser that fell in.
Yeah.
We're trying to those things that are with the taste of that aser.
So in the shach adds, this is different than the other cases of yovish falling into the taruvas, because by yovish he says we say those pieces are around. The same pieces are around, right? And it's like, the problem that was there before is now also present in the taruvas. You're dealing with the tafshul neto, purely the tafshul. They're not dealing with the chaticha.
Because he says the chaticha was removed.
Exactly. That's why he says, the Sifsei Das, I think, says the chaticha was removed. If that's the case, all you're dealing with the tafshil, you don't have to worry about the same chaticha having been a problem, now continuing to be a problem, because there's no roiv. No, we're focusing from the tafshil. We're starting off with the tafshil, and because that's where we're concentrating, it's like with the egg, you have a perfect sfeka in saying that it, even if there's no roiv, obviously there's no roiv to mevatel the plita. Who says there was ever a problem to begin with here? Who says that there's any tarfus in here?
The ikr is not an ikr with the Sfeka. We don't say tam ke'ikr. It goes so far.
Exactly. That's what's a little. I thought that was an interesting chiddush, but it makes sense because we're allowing it because Sfeka. The only question is, will this be a guf and taruva situation? It's not. You're dealing with the tafshil alone, always, from the very beginning, from the start. The chaticha is not there. It's perfect. It works. In the second example of plita, not having enough to mevatel the plita, you will be able to mevatel it or matter it as sfek, right? Because you do have a real suffix if it's bechlal treif, right? So it's very interesting. You don't know for sure if it's treif.
Maybe that's also because.
And even if first of all, who says that piece fell in? So this is a perfect example. So I don't think there's too many. I don't know if anyone is choilek on this one because it's the whole. You're starting off only with the tafshil, therefore you have a good sfek in here. Okay, I think we've covered enough for tonight. We'll continue next week.
Yeah, I could use.